Okay, so picture this for a second. You're standing on the edge of a temperate rainforest, and there's mist rolling in off the Pacific Ocean. Then you blink, and suddenly you're surrounded by these glass skyscrapers in a financial district that's just buzzing. Blink one more time, and now you're on frozen tundra under the northern lights, and you're trying to keep your eyelashes from freezing together.
This is like a really disjointed movie montage.
It does, right? But it's actually just one country. Today, we're talking about Canada, but I want to just throw out the postcard version right away. We are not here to talk about maple syrup or how polite everyone is. We're doing a deep dive into the sheer scale and, frankly, the logistical chaos of moving to a place that is, well, it's a landscape of extremes.
And the timing for this conversation is really critical. It's early 2026. We're looking at sources from Dara Immigration Services, and the numbers are honestly staggering. Canada is bracing for about 380,000 new permanent residents this year, just this year alone. That's under the new 2026-2028 immigration levels plan.
Wait, can we just pause on that number? 380,000 people.
In 1 year, yeah. That's the target.
Where are they all going to sleep? I mean, I've seen the headlines about the housing crisis. That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is a massive challenge, and that's exactly why we need to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Moving to Canada in 2026, it's not just about getting a visa stamp anymore. It's about strategic survival. Winging it is just not an option. You're entering a nation that spans 6 time zones, and it has 10 completely distinct provincial economies that often operate like separate little countries.
So our mission today is really to give you, the listener, a kind of survival guide. We're going to look at where to live, the brutal reality of what things cost, and the specific little hurdles that catch even really smart people off guard.
And before we get into the map, I want to clarify something that trips people up constantly.
Yeah.
The source material is titled Discover Canada.
Which sounds lovely, very inviting.
It does, but if you Google that phrase, you get 2 very different things. So, meaning 1 is the lived experience, what we're talking about today, the actual process. Meaning 2 is a very specific government PDF. It's called Discover Canada, the rights and responsibilities of citizenship.
Ah, that's the study book for the test, right?
It is, yeah. It's full of history, the War of 1812, as bill becomes law. It's essential reading. But for when you apply for citizenship 3 years after you arrive, for today, we are focusing on the experience of discovery, the practical, boots-on-the-ground stuff.
Okay, let's get into the geography then, but not just a list of capitals. I was reading through the notes and it hit me. Canada isn't really one single thing. It's a federation.
That is probably the most important mental shift a newcomer needs to make. Because it's a federation, your daily life, your healthcare, your kids' education, the job market, it's all dictated by the province, not the federal government in Ottawa.
Yeah.
The moment you cross a border from, say, Ontario to Manitoba,
Everything changes.
your healthcare coverage changes, the school curriculum changes, the job market looks completely different.
So it's almost like moving between countries in the EU or something.
In terms of bureaucracy, yes, it can feel that way. A teacher certified in British Columbia can't just walk into a classroom in Quebec. You have to recertify. The economy in Alberta is based on oil. The economy in Nova Scotia is all about the ocean. If you pick the wrong region for your industry, you're going to struggle.
Okay, let's tour these regions. Most people, I assume, land at Pearson Airport in Toronto. So let's start with that industrial powerhouse, Ontario.
In the default setting, right? Ontario is the economic engine. It's fast-paced, incredibly multicultural, and very competitive. Toronto is the financial heart. And then you have Waterloo nearby, which is sort of Silicon Valley North.
But looking at this 2026 market update, I have to ask, is it worth it? The rent situation looks pretty painful.
It depends on what you value. The report says rents have softened, but we should be real about what that means.
Right. What does softened actually mean on the ground?
It means a 1-bedroom apartment in Toronto still averages around $2,587.
Almost $2,600 for a box in the sky.
And that's just rent. You still have to add utilities, internet, transit. You're burning through cash at a frightening rate.
So why do people do it? Why not just go somewhere cheaper?
It's about optionality. Think of Toronto not just as busy, but as having a high density of opportunity. If you lose your job in a small town, you might have to pack up and move. If you lose your job in Toronto.
There are 5 other companies down the street.
Exactly. You pay a premium for the ability to pivot your career quickly. You're paying for that network, that collision density. But it is a grind.
Okay, let's head east. Quebec. This feels like the biggest outlier in all the data.
Quebec is fascinating. It's really the only region where the culture feels distinctly European. The history, the architecture, a completely different legal code.
And the language, I mean, the source material is pretty blunt about this. It's not just nice to speak French, it's mandatory.
It is the official language of the workplace. If you don't speak French, your job options basically vanish the second you step outside of a few specific neighborhoods in Montreal. And even within Montreal, the political climate has shifted. There are new laws reinforcing French.
So if you're, say, an Anglophone engineer, you're locking yourself out of the market.
Pretty much, unless you're willing to learn very, very fast. But here's the trade-off, and it's a seductive one. The cost of living.
I saw those numbers. A two-bedroom in Montreal is around $1,930. That's cheaper than a one-bedroom in Toronto.
It is. But you also have to look at the trajectory. Prices in Montreal have surged, what was it, 71% since 2019?
Yeah.
So the gap is closing. And then there's the social cost. If you don't speak the language, it can be really isolating. You might get the job, but do you get the jokes at the water cooler? Can you talk to your child's teacher comfortably?
It's a huge lifestyle trade-off. Cheaper rent, but you have to really integrate into a distinct culture.
And if you embrace it, it's wonderful. But if you resist it, it can be very lonely.
Let's swing the other way then. West Coast. British Columbia. Land of yoga pants and mountains.
The Pacific Gateway. Visually, it's just stunning. And Vancouver's the only major city where you don't really do winter in that traditional Canadian sense. It rains a lot, but you aren't shoveling snow for months.
But I keep seeing this term in the notes, the sunshine tax.
It's the premium you pay for not freezing to death. British Columbia has the highest cost of living in the entire country. We talked about Toronto being expensive.
Yeah, I thought that was the peak.
Vancouver tops it. The average one-bedroom is hovering near $2,896.
Wow, we're talking practically $3,000 for a rental.
And historically, wages in Vancouver have actually been lower than in Toronto or Calgary.
That math just doesn't work. Higher rent, lower wages. How does anyone survive out there?
A lot of people really struggle. You see a lot of house-poor residents. They have the ocean view, they have the mountains on the weekend, but they have very little disposable income. It's a choice. Do you want a big bank account, or do you want to be able to hike 365 days a year?
So if I'm listening to this and I actually want to, maybe buy a house one day and not just pay off someone else's mortgage, where do I even look?
Then that brings us right to the prairies. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. This is where that Canadian dream of home ownership is still, mathematically possible.
The source describes Alberta as entrepreneurial and conservative. What's the main draw?
Money.
Pure and simple. Alberta has no provincial sales tax or PST. So in Ontario or BC, you're adding 13–15% tax on almost everything. In Alberta, you save that. Plus, wages are high because of the energy sector.
Right, oil and gas.
Yes, but that comes with volatility. The economy booms and busts with the price of oil. You have to have the stomach for that kind of risk.
And a stomach for the weather, it seems. I need to ask about this because the numbers look terrifying. -30.
-30 is normal. It can hit -40. At that temperature, exposed skin freezes in minutes. Cars won't start unless you plug them in.
But then I read about these Chinook winds. That's mainly in Calgary. Warm winds blow off the mountains and can raise the temperature by 20 degrees in just a few hours.
Doesn't that mess with people?
It causes massive migraines for a lot of people. And the roads turn into this slushy, icy disaster zone. It's physically exhausting.
What about the other prairie provinces? If I can't handle the boom-bust cycle of Alberta?
Then you look at Winnipeg in Manitoba. It is kind of the unsung hero for newcomers. Rents are low, around $4,450. And their provincial nominee programs are very aggressive. They actually want you there.
So it's easier to get in?
Much easier. But again, you're trading that ease of entry for a climate that is actively trying to kill you for about 5 months of the year.
A fair trade, maybe. Okay, let's finish the tour with Atlantic Canada. This used to be the place people left, didn't it?
For decades, yes. It was known as a have-not region. But the Atlantic Immigration Program, the AIP, it changed everything. They made it very streamlined for employers to hire foreigners. So now, places like Halifax are booming.
Is it still cheap, though?
It's catching up fast. Halifax rents are over $2,000 now. But the pace of life is different. It's slower. People talk to their neighbors. The downside is that the infrastructure is really straining. Finding a family doctor in Nova Scotia right now is incredibly difficult because the population just grew faster than the services did.
Okay, so we've got the map. Now I want to get into the practical toolkit, because reading about a $60,000 salary is one thing, but actually living on it is something entirely.
This is where that aha moment really needs to happen for people. You have to look at purchasing power, not just the gross number on a job offer.
Break that down.
Okay, take that $60,000. After federal and provincial taxes, your take-home pay is already a lot less. If you live in Vancouver, rent can eat up 60% of that. You have almost nothing left. But if you take that same salary to Winnipeg, your rent is half. And suddenly you actually have disposable income.
But in Winnipeg, you have hidden costs, don't you? The things we just talked about.
You have the winter tax. You need winter tires. That's $1,000. You do a proper parka that can handle an Arctic blast. That's another $500. You pay more for heating. In Vancouver, you don't need the gear, but you pay the landlord instead.
So, pick your poison. Okay, let's talk about the first week. The sources list a bunch of admin tasks, but what's the one thing that really trips people up?
Credit. The credit score.
This always confuses people, especially if they're coming from a cash-based economy.
It really does. In many parts of the world, cash is king. If you have money, you can buy stuff. In Canada, if you have no credit history, you're a ghost. You're a financial risk.
So how do you even build it if no one will give you credit in the first place?
You have to play the game. You walk into a bank and you get what's called a secured credit card. You give them, say, $500 cash to hold as collateral, and they give you a card with a $500 limit. You just buy your groceries with it, and you pay it off immediately. You do that for 6 months.
So you're basically borrowing your own money just to prove you're trustworthy?
Precisely. Because without that score, you can't get a cell phone plan, you can't get a car loan, and most importantly, a landlord won't rent to you.
Which brings us to that first week checklist. SIN and health.
Get the social insurance number. The SIN, the day you land. You cannot legally be paid without it, and apply for provincial health care instantly.
Why instantly? Isn't it free?
It's publicly funded, but the admin takes time. In some provinces, there used to be a 3-month waiting period. That's mostly gone away, but the processing still isn't instant. If you slip on the ice on day 3 and you haven't applied, you could be on the hook for thousands.
And what about actually finding a doctor?
That's the reality check. You'll get emergency care, yes, but finding a family doctor for just routine checkups, that can take years. You will most likely be relying on walk-in clinics for a long time.
Which is a huge frustration for people.
Okay, I want to pivot to the challenges. We need to be real about this. Dara Immigration Services highlights what they call the credential crisis. This is probably the most painful part of the immigrant journey for professionals. We've all heard the story of the neurosurgeon driving a taxi.
Is that actually still true in 2026? Or is it more of an urban legend?
It is painfully true. Canada has very, very strict regulatory bodies. If you're a doctor, a nurse, an engineer, your degree from back home does not automatically transfer. You often have to redo residencies, take expensive exams, or even go back to school.
So you have this highly skilled person who can't actually work in their field.
And that leads to the survival job. You have to take a job in retail or food service just to pay the rent while you study at night. It can be a massive blow to your ego, to your mental health.
So the strategy has to be psychological as much as professional.
You have to lower your expectations for the first 2 years. Plan for that bridge training. Don't expect to walk off the plane and into the operating room.
The other huge challenge is housing, which we've touched on, but specifically that catch-22 for newcomers.
Yeah, and the vacancy rate in major cities is around 1%. That means landlords can be incredibly picky. They want credit checks, employment letters, references from past landlords.
All things a newcomer doesn't have.
So the landlord just picks the other guy.
Yeah.
The strategy here really is to look at secondary cities. So instead of downtown Toronto, you look at London, Ontario, or maybe Hamilton. Instead of Vancouver, you look at Nanaimo. The competition is just slightly less fierce, and landlords might be more willing to take a chance on you.
Right. Drive until you qualify.
Or I guess fly until you qualify.
Okay, let's hit some rapid-fire FAQs. These are the questions everyone asks. Citizenship, what's the magic number?
1,095 days. You need to be physically present in Canada for 3 years out of the last 5. My advice: keep a travel journal. Every single day counts.
Safety.
Globally, it's very safe. But don't be naive. Big cities have petty crime. Bike theft is a huge problem in Toronto and Vancouver. And with recent economic downturns, homelessness and visible issues in downtown cores have definitely increased.
Here's a pro tip I saw in the notes about language. What if I speak French, but I don't want to live in Quebec?
This is the golden ticket in 2026. The government has a specific target. They want 9% of all immigrants outside of Quebec to be francophone.
Why? What's the logic there?
To preserve the French language across the country. So if you speak French, you get a massive number of extra points in the express entry system. You can move to Alberta or Ontario, but because you speak French, you basically jump to the front of the line.
That is huge. So if you have any high school French, it's time to brush up on it.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
It could be the difference between getting in and not getting in.
And finally, the sources mention that the rules are stricter now. What does that mean for someone applying?
The government is under a lot of pressure to manage this population growth. Scrutiny on applications is higher than ever. If you fill out a form wrong, they don't call you to clarify anymore, they just reject it.
So the DIY approach is getting pretty risky.
It's very risky. Dara Immigration Services, not surprisingly, suggests getting a professional assessment. It's an investment, for sure, but compared to the cost of a rejection and a 2-year delay, it's cheap insurance.
So we've covered a lot. We've done the cross-country tour, we've looked at the bank accounts, and we've probably scared everyone with the weather.
It is a lot to process.
Where does this leave someone who's thinking about this journey?
I think it comes back to that initial idea of discovery. You aren't just moving to a static place called Canada. You're moving to a massive shifting puzzle.
And you have to find the piece that fits you.
You have to match your own lifestyle to the geography.
Yeah.
If you hate driving, don't move to the suburbs of Calgary.
Yeah.
If you need to save money aggressively, don't move to Vancouver just hoping it will all work out.
Yeah.
Because it won't.
It's about being really honest with yourself about what you can handle.
And here's a thought to leave you with. We talk about Canada as this singular thing, one flag, one anthem.
Yeah.
But when you actually look at the economics, the climate, the culture,
Mm-hmm.
are you really moving to one country? Or are you choosing between 10 different nations that are just kind of wrapped in a trench coat? Because the life you build in a fishing village in Newfoundland has almost no DNA in common with the life you build in a condo in downtown Toronto.
That is a powerful way to look at it. You're not just choosing a country, you're choosing a very specific mode of existence.
Exactly. So choose wisely.
Well, there you have it, a survival guide to the Great White North. If you want to see the specific rental tables or those detailed breakdowns, definitely check out the source material.
It's worth the read.
Thanks for listening. Stay warm, save your receipts, and good luck on the journey.